Well, let's take a closer look at the political response to the Line 5 dispute between the Governor of Michigan and Enbridge and the role of the federal government here in Canada in defending the pipeline. I'm joined by three members of Parliament to debate that response. Marc Serré is an Ontario Liberal MP and the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources. McLean is a Calgary Conservative MP and his party's critic for natural resources. And Richard Cannings is a British Columbia New Democrat MP and his party's natural resources critic as well. Good to see you all, gentlemen. Monsieur Serré, let me start with you. Here we are at the 11th hour looking at the possible shutdown of the Line 5 pipeline, although it doesn't seem that likely to happen today while the two sides are still in mediation. But look, there's no guarantee on how long this pipeline might stay open before the governor in Michigan acts. What has your government been doing to try to head off this threat that's been hanging there from the Michigan governor since last fall?
Well, thanks, Peter. Our government is very active at all levels. You know, the Prime Minister has met with President Biden. We've met with the Secretary of State, several cabinet ministers and our governors in the U.S. The ambassador, we've engaged, and also we've submitted the amicus brief to our intentions in the courts to invoke the treaty. So we put that forward in the courts. So to be clear, you know, we are wanting to make sure both parties sit at the table. A mediated solution is the best, but a solution. But we know that you know the workers is very important here. The jobs, economic benefit. We also know that mediation is the best approach. But
I'm wondering whether does that suggest all of that engagement you say your government's been involved in for several months just hasn't paid off because certainly the governor of Michigan is not backing down.
No, it's paid off. We've had a lot of. I mean, the governor of Michigan has an agenda, and is continuing with the path that they've been doing. But we've been engaging with many of our U.S. counterparts, both sides of the border. Line 5 is crucial for workers, it's crucial for the economy. But we've been engaged at all levels, and we'll do whatever it takes to make sure that Line 5 doesn't close.
Mr. McLean, the federal government yesterday, as Mr. Serré's pointed out, filed its brief opposing the shutdown, saying it would cause serious damage to the Canadian economy and further would undermine the Canada-U.S. relationship. What more do you believe the federal government should be doing?
What more should it have been doing all the way along here is getting involved from day one on this back in November, as we called for. We saw this coming 6 months ago, and the diddling and dawdling that happened with the federal government pushing the can down the road, kicking the can down the road, so to say, until the 11th hour. Let's not forget the amicus curiae brief that the federal government filed yesterday came in on the very last minute, on the very last day. They're basically saying, okay, you know, everybody else, there's 4 amicus briefs that had to go from the Canadian side here, Enbridge's side, and the Canadian government was the last one to file. So it's doing the very least at the very last minute to get involved in this file. We also want the Prime Minister to be directly engaged with the President on this. This should be decided at the state level. We've made that clear from the very beginning. And it depends upon the relationship between two senior statesmen here, supposedly, which would be the leaders of the two countries. They need to get their heads together and actually have this resolved along the Transit Pipeline Treaty, which was supposed to be signed between our two countries to enforce exactly this scenario. We're asking for a lot of engagement here. Okay,
let me come back to that. But Mr. Cannings, let me hear from you. Like your two colleagues, the NDP supports the continued operation of this Line 5 pipeline. The party opposes other pipelines, though. Environmental groups and Indigenous groups on both sides of the border support shutting down Line 5. Why does the NDP support the continued operation of this pipeline?
Well, this is a totally different pipeline dispute than the others that we've been hearing about, whether it's Trans Mountain Expansion, Keystone XL. Those are expansion pipelines that are predicated on really increasing dramatically the output of the Alberta oil sands. This is a pipeline that's been operating for 68 years. It's bringing Canadian crude oil to Canada, to Eastern Canada, where it creates Canadian jobs, is a feedstock for the Ontario manufacturing sector, the fuel in Ontario and Quebec. So this is something, it's about maintaining the status quo for Canada. As we transition to a low carbon future, we'll be needing some oil and gas over the intervening years, and this is something that's critical to do that. But it's really a wake-up call when we see, you know, the governor of Michigan President Biden, both running on election promises to shut down pipelines. It's a wake-up call that the public just isn't willing to shoulder that burden of risk around pipelines and the fossil fuel industry.
Let's talk about you've touched on it, the Prime Minister and Joe Biden. Mr. Biden has an agenda. The Governor of Michigan has an agenda. And we know, Mr. Serré, the damages from shutting down this pipeline to Canada, well documented. But Joe Biden's been silent on this. And we know he canceled the Keystone XL pipeline on his first day in office. He's a close ally of the Michigan governor. How concerned should Canadians be about whether the U.S. president's really going to be a true friend of Canada when an issue like this comes forward and we're not hearing from him?
Well, let's be clear here. This is a court dispute between Enbridge and the state of Michigan. No court has ordered this pipeline to be shut down. The court, is ordering the parties for mediation. We're continuing that. It's really unlikely that there'll be any closure tonight at midnight.
Mm-hmm.
So really, it's important to continue that dialogue. But we have put the amicus in the courts. And it's clear, and we've done that on, because now we know the other parties' positions, and we're in a better
But would you
position.
like to hear support for Canada's? Would you like to hear support for Canada's position from the president?
Well, I mean, the president has the cabinet has been very supportive, and like I said, right now it's dealing with the state court, and we're supporting President Biden, supporting the workers, supporting labor in Michigan. We're supporting the pipeline on both sides of the border, and we got to continue with the mediation in court.
Okay,
with,
Mr. McLean, does this dispute raise, and the way it's unfolding here, red flags for you? Raise red flags for you about how the Biden administration views the relationship with Canada?
Well, red flags all along, but the red flag we have to raise and we have to respond to is how our government is responding to the U.S.'s non-action on this file. This is a treaty between our two countries. A lot has been constructed along the basis of this treaty. So we've got a pipeline that's been there since 1953. We've had a treaty there since 1977. Think of all the industry that's been built in Ontario, in our manufacturing heartland, because of that energy infrastructure that exists. There's all kinds of petrochemicals. It supplies the energy that Ontarians need for heating their homes, for fueling their cars, for their jets, for a lot of their farms in Ontario. This is something that is going to take a huge amount of environmental GHGs to replace and get those same energy inputs to the market. So we're pushing and pulling here as far as our objectives go. We need to enforce what we have and make sure we move forward on a very responsible way, both with respect to our economies between our two countries and the environment.
Mr. Cannings, let me finish with you. What's your view of about how this is unfolding and what it suggests about perhaps what the relationship might be like with the new Biden administration? Not so new anymore now, but with Joe Biden's presidency.
Well, let's put it this way. Everybody agrees that it would be best to have a negotiated settlement, through diplomatic means. And to do that, we have to approach it respectfully. We have to understand what the reasons behind Michigan's actions are. They're concerned about the environment. It doesn't help in negotiations if Jason Kenney calls the governor of Michigan brain dead before she even starts this dispute. It doesn't help that the Minister of Natural Resources is saying this is non-negotiable and then says we have to negotiate. So I think we have to, really understand what the concerns are about Michigan. They've had the disaster at Kalamazoo and Enbridge Line 6B, 2010, destroyed 50 kilometers of that river. All of the indigenous groups in Michigan are against this. So we have to approach it with that in mind. And as I say, this is a wake-up call for the future. We are seeing more and more of this. The public is just not ready to support these kind of projects as we move into a greener future.
We'll have to leave it there. The story's not over, though, gentlemen, and we'll have a chance to revisit it, I'm sure, as it continues to unfold. But thank you all for your time tonight. I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.